Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio, show 261, recorded at Big Dog Studios in Eugene, Oregon. Today's show is made possible by the Herbal Entrepreneur Conference. Have you got your free ticket to the Herbal Entrepreneur Conference yet? Head on over to herbalentrepreneur.com now to join Rosemary Gladstar, Margie Flint, Nancy Phillips, Lucy Jones, Talal Al-Ahmed, Yolanda Joy, and many more at the virtual event March 22nd through the 26th. You'll get their best tips, strategies, and ideas to help you on your journey to grow your own herbal business. So jump in now at the herbalentrepreneur.com. Ace High Graphics is your place for custom face masks, shirts, and hoodies. Visit them at acehighgraphics.com. Now, here are your hosts.
I'm Candace Hunter.
I'm Patrick Hunter.
And welcome to Real Herbalism Radio. Wow, Patrick, talking to Leslie is always really introspective, isn't it?
Yeah, but she's a special kind of herbalist.
I love talking to her. I love her. One of the things that she was talking about that has been resonating with me all week is, or I shouldn't say resonating, but bopping around in my head all week is the idea of ritual for men and ritual for women. And as you know, as a woman, I have seen and I've watched many of my fellow women as we've had children and especially daughters trying to come up with rituals to help mark the changes in life. And for girls, it's, some of it's kind of easy and obvious when to do it. And girls, women's bodies, give us a focus. And I mean, even through most of the middle ages of our years, when we're fertile, we've got the monthly cycle. I was astounded when I started to move into the menopausal years to find out, particularly from older women, that in fact the moon cycle remains. There's just no bleeding. So there's still cycles, and those cycles naturally and easily give themselves to ritual. And, so daily rituals and all that sort of thing is kind of common. But for men, not so much. Men don't seem to have, at least when I've spoken to you about it, you don't seem to have any real things that you can say, oh, every month I noticed this, or you don't really have rituals, do you?
No, I think that's why men think they're eternally youthful, that they don't age.
Yeah. Despite the gray hair and the sagging belly and the wrinkles.
Hope you're not talking about me there.
That they all no, of course not you. You look so young.
Right. I feel it because I haven't done any rituals.
There you go.
You're right. Even with a teenager, men and teens, I mean, it used to be that there were, not just rites of passage, but there were tests and there were things that were part of the ritual. Some native cultures would send their young men out into the wilderness for a night or two.
For a vision quest type of thing.
Kind of thing, or just, survival tactic or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily do that. I mean, sure, there might be, a scouting adventure, but it's so safe, if you will, now.
Yeah.
Versus then that there's no, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. If there's any male listeners out there, let me know. But as far as I've, myself growing up, there was no rituals that I knew of as part of growing up. And I've tried to instill that with my son. I think the only ritual I ever did was, I think he was 16 and I let him, he wanted to go somewhere when we were camping. And I said, okay, that's about a half-day hike or so.
Yeah.
You go for it. We know where you are if you're not back by a certain time,
Yeah.
And that gave him that independence, but I wouldn't have necessarily called it a ritual as much maybe as a rite of passage. So it gets to become a blurry line between those two for men. Yeah. And, we go through those moments in life. There's no ritual. I mean, I think about it for women as we're speaking, there's the baby shower ritual.
Yeah.
Men don't really have an equivalent.
They don't take part in it as much.
Not really, no.
Modern men do more, but it's really a girly thing.
Yeah, there's the ritual of the, if you want to look at what, as I'm now starting, my mind is starting to click into gear here, rituals like, a graduation from high school is a ritual.
Yeah.
That would be
But
a
that's
ritual.
universal.
But that's universal, yes.
There's the stag party.
Yeah, I was going to say there's the stag party, the bachelor
Right.
party, that kind of thing. If you decided you're going to college and you want to be in a fraternity, either male or female,
Yeah.
there's definitely a ritual in
fraternities and
pledging
sororities
and for
have
getting
their
in.
stuff.
Yes,
yeah.
they do. If you're going to be a doctorate, there's some things like that. If you're in the Navy, for instance, and you cross the equator, there's a ritual for crossing the equator. There's also a ritual for crossing the international date line. There's those types of things that happen. But if you're not in the military, you'll never ever see that. So for the most part, for men that aren't or have not done those types of things, there isn't a lot of ritual that I can think of. There's no ritual for a wet dream, the first wet dream that you have. There's no ritual necessarily for the first time you have sex. There's no ritual for, we don't hunt. I mean, there's just so many things that we as males and men culture, we don't do anymore.
Well, and a lot of the things, even like shaving, is something that many men still do.
Yeah.
Majority of men still do. But now boys oftentimes go find that information on YouTube and do it themselves.
Yeah,
there's a big YouTube thing where young men and boys like to find as much information there as possible instead of going to their fathers.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be the thing where information was passed down from father to son, and this is how you do things, this is how you're a man, this is what you do. And to some extent there is, but now there's so much information that, when our son started shaving, he just started shaving. I didn't even know he was doing it.
Right?
And suddenly I'm like,
I think I informed you. Did you know?
Yeah, and I didn't know that. And I told him, I said, I was really looking forward to that. I mean, that's the time where we might, provide the first razor or first, thing, and then show them how to do it. It becomes, it's not always like a lesson, but it is a ritual. It's
also like learning to tie your own tie.
Yeah.
Which a lot of men find on YouTube now.
Well, yeah, the fact of the matter is that if you want to learn anything, you can, but and you can learn it, but you don't get the ritual part of it. You don't get the extra level of learning there that you're not going to get from YouTube, and you're not going to get from another venue, whatever that is. So
when you teach someone something, or you do a ritual with someone in that way, there's something that gets passed with it that's intangible.
Yeah, and energy.
Yeah, an energy. It's an experience. It's like a flavor.
Well, I think with any ritual that we've done, because you not to tease you necessarily, but you seem to have a ritual for every day of the week, but within those rituals, there's always some type of energy movement, whether that's that's a fire, or that's a saging, or that's a whatever it is. It's just that there's something that involves moving energy, and I think is unbeknownst to the people like me that are doing things for a ritual, what we would deem as a ritual. Sometimes we don't put that together as a part of it, and it is.
Yeah, and that energy movement is really, it's important because it marks a change. You know, and that's
so kind of on the whole, the modern Western man, Western American man, if you want, doesn't seem like we have a lot of rituals.
Yeah.
There's hazing rituals. I mean, but not hazing like you got to walk down, the football field with something put some, I mean, there's nothing like that. It's, or when I went through hazing rituals, which in swimming, my swim team, we had to go through that initiation.
Right.
I started going down a line, and I was like, oh, I should probably adjust that a little bit. But, anyway.
Yeah, hazing has definitely got a very bad name. At least when we were younger, that was really a bad. It was like
in the last 20 years, hazing has been a problem, and it's been taken to the nth degree.
Yeah, because it becomes more bullying.
It does become bullying. And what I guess I was saying was hazing was like, the first time that I went golfing with my golfing friends, and I was the first time I was with that group. You go through a ritual, but you wouldn't say it's a ritual. You would go through a little bit of a hazing routine with them. You find out what the boundaries are, who's doing what, who's the smart ass, who's the funny guy, who's the one that takes golf way too seriously. You start to learn that, and then when you first go up to a tee, you don't know what's going to happen a little bit. So there's that ritual of learning that your golf partner is with you and how you handle that. And there's a little bit of energy transfer there. But if I told any of my golfing friends, hey, we're doing a ritual right now, they would look at me like I was half-baked.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of things that are actually ritualistic that are built into male culture, into our culture in general. But I'm like calling out male culture because I see them in things like football and basketball and baseball. The ritual of how the guy who's on deck is, how he warms up and the little extra tapping of his foot. I mean, a lot of them have a specific, like, you tap your left foot more times than your right foot, and then the ball will go the right spot. But if you tap it right foot too many times, or, so many little rituals that are all about getting your mind right.
Yeah.
Which is really, I think, what it's about.
Right. And it's whether it was martial arts or I'll go back right now to golf, every time I approach hitting the ball, especially off the tee, there's a certain way I do it every single time. It's a ritual.
Right.
I step this many stops, I get this much place, I set this up, tap, tap, tap on the golf club. I do the same thing over and over again. Right. And I even do it when I'm at the driving range. Why? Because I'm getting my mind right for that next motion and engaging that muscle memory. And if I don't do the ritual, then it's not going to be at least one of my average shots.
Right. Yeah.
So that being said, there are rituals in that way for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And those, I think a lot of times, I think a lot of men's rituals have become more like commonplace. We take it for granted. That's just normal. And women's rituals are not commonplace, normal. We take it for granted. So they become somehow different. We call those rituals. Whereas for men, they're just normal activity. I mean, of course, you take exactly 4 steps before you get to the tee, and then you turn around twice, and
right.
roll your right shoulder 3 times and your left shoulder once, and that, of course, is just normal.
Right.
Even though realism is actually a ritual.
I never think of ritual being as something that I do by myself, and like in that instance, getting ready to tee off a golf ball. And I do certain things. I never think of that as a ritual. I just think of that as something that I do. And I think if you would ask most men, they wouldn't think of it as a ritual in that way.
Right.
I think when I think of ritual, I think of, a group of men,
a group of people,
men and boys, or a group of people doing something, interacting for a goal, like a solstice ritual, or a Yule ritual, or a whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. For me, life is many rituals of many sizes. I mean, I have my little like daily tea ritual of how I do make my tea, and the first cup, focus more, and I have little rituals of the ways that I do those things, and they're just daily things to help, like I said, get my mind right, help me be peaceful inside and be prepared for the day and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, the bigger rituals, like you said, solstice, for instance, or, spring equinox rituals. The spring equinox rituals are a lot less structured and sometimes involve others, like going out to collect cottonwood buds. That's often with other people,
right?
With herbalists that I care for and respect. And I often aim for, women, like this year, Sue Sierra Lupe. I got to go out getting cottonwood buds with her this month, and it was really wonderful. And I do that because it's a reconnection for me. It's a reconnection with herbs, herbalism, the plants, the energies of spring, and it's like a renewal of my relationship with not just the plants and everything else, but with the person that I'm with.
Well, isn't a ritual like a repeatable set of actions and ideas to get to an energetic goal, I feel? Versus, I mean, when you say you went out to get,
the cottonwood buds?
Yeah, I don't think of that as a ritual as much as it was a fun outing in the spring.
Well, I mean, it's a fun outing in the spring, but there's the ritual of going out for the various spring herbs that are, for me, when I do them, I mean, I might do some of them, like I might go nettling 5 times, let's say, in a given spring. The first time when I go out, I am very clear about how I hold my energy, how I hold my mind. I practice, my constant gratitude,
right,
and that sort of thing. So I have practices that are somewhat internal, but I usually pair those things with somebody else. So it might, like I said, the cottonwood bud gathering paired with another herbalist, and someone who, she was the one that introduced me to cottonwood buds. So that for me, that's a ritual, but it's also a renewal, which is what spring is about, is renewing.
Mm-hmm.
So in spring, my rituals are not necessarily super structured, but I practice, the other 4 times that I go out for cottonwood bud or for nettles after the first one, I might be a lot more casual about it. But that first one, I'm usually really aware of the energies and offering, offering gratitude and being aware.
We've put out the call to all you herbal product makers. The Real Herb Market wants you. We're looking for herbalists who make the best herbal products to join our sellers crew. If your herbals are handmade, sustainable, and of the highest quality, pop over to the Real Herb Market and fill out the form. For more info, visit realherbmarket.com.
Part of what ritual does is it slows us down and helps us become aware of the stuff beyond our daily heady lives. So most of us live most of our lives more in our heads than anything else. We're thinking all the time, and we're projecting all the time. So when I'm doing a ritual, I'm aiming to not so much project, at least in the spring, but to take in and to be aware and to be present, fully present in that moment, and not analyze or think it through, just perceive,
Right.
and experience, and offer, the nudge or the motions that make sense in the moment. So, ritual has such a broad scope of what it can be,
Yeah, and like I said, I think it sounds like you're applying it to many more, not mundane things, that does not sound right, but many more things that you do throughout the day and throughout your life.
Yeah, there's a book, I can't remember the author's name, but it's called Little Altars Everywhere. And the book itself has absolutely nothing to do with my mindset here, but the title is something that's always stuck with me because that's honestly the way I live my life. I'm like, little rituals everywhere, little altars everywhere, little moments or points that I can stop and say, wow, here I am. I'm human. This is flippin' amazing. Wow. Hey, look at that sky. Look how amazing it looks right now. It's blue or it's cloudy, or look at the way the light, the orange is, layering on those clouds as the sun is setting or rising.
Right.
So little rituals everywhere, little opportunities everywhere.
Maybe that's a great way to bring a little bit more of that magic into our lives that seems to have been lost in the everyday mundane.
It was one of the things I learned from the Basset Hound, first Basset Hound, Saxon Brew. He taught me that it is wise to really just take as many opportunities as you can to step back for just a second and say, wow, this is awesome. Could you look at that? Can you believe we get this?
Yeah. It's nice to have dog eyes when you're looking at life.
Right. He was part of what started me on the path of recognizing rituals don't have to just be the giant, big, celebratory markings of huge occasions. Those are important rituals too. And, our spring ones are pretty lightweight. Like I said, the first nettling and the making vinegar with the cleavers, and it's all of them are about recognizing the plants that are popping up and then starting back into the motion of renewing the herbal pantry for the next year and restocking, as it were, because usually by this time of year we've run out of things or are running out of things, like the cleaver's vinegar, which is probably long gone at this point. I have to check the back of the cabinet. There may be one more quart left, in which case I've got some really tasty dressings ahead. But yeah, my spring ones are more, relaxed. My fall ones are a lot more formal. I have a tendency to there's more opportunities for slightly larger formal occasions in the fall. Like the Day of the Dead and the fall equinox and the harvest celebrations. And
Yeah, it makes you think about other cultures and their ability to continue with rituals that we seem to have lessened or lightened or removed.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're really devout Catholic, there's rituals all the
Rituals
time.
all the time.
There's ritual every day.
And there's holy days all the time.
I mean,
and,
if you're
yeah.
practicing devout Jewish person, you're going to have there's
Yeah.
a lot of, and then
the whole Judeo-Christian culture, all of
I mean,
it.
any
Islam,
any
all of
religion.
it.
I mean, even Muslim, they ritual every day.
Yeah.
Twice a day.
Yeah. Got lots of rituals. Yeah.
So maybe it's because I'm not a religious person in that vein that I don't feel about ritual as some other person that might be listening right now and saying, well, what do you mean? I do rituals all the time because of my faith.
Right.
And that may be true. I mean, if you take that idea, then I would say like me meeting with my people, if you will, every week at a certain time at a pub would be a ritual.
It is a little bit. Yeah.
And without that, we haven't been able to really do that for a year. It's starting to wane on me.
Yeah.
It was something so simple that, and for many people, same thing, something so simple that we took for granted. And then when you took it away, it's like, wow, it really gave me a lot of positive energy for the week and how I was going to move through the week. And it was just this refresh every week for me.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the no longer doing something that causes you to realize how valuable it was. And then when you return to doing it, it's like I find myself in meditation practice regularly falling away, be doing great for a few months. And then one day I'll wake up and realize, I've meditated for a month now. And that hasn't been good for me. Mm-hmm. At first, the first few days of not doing meditation, I don't really notice. After about 2 weeks, I start to notice that life isn't as peaceful as it had been, that I'm not as peaceful as I was,
right?
And that it seems like there's so many dramas. And then I spend a week or two convincing myself or trying to convince myself that all these dramas are somehow unusual and different because of the things that are going on in life with the people around me, whether it's my family or my community, whatever, just life and other people. And then eventually, after usually like 3 to 4 weeks of not meditating, I realized that that's all a bunch of hooey. And the fact is, I'm just not meditating. If I start meditating again, all those dramas don't seem nearly as intense. But it's the absence of meditation that reminds me of the obvious. For you, it's the same thing. The absence of getting together with friends reminds you of the obvious.
That is true. It is obvious until it's not there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, speaking of it's not there.
What?
How are your New Year's resolutions going? Are they there or are they not there?
Oh, still biking and trying to bike even more now than 3 days a week because the weather is in our neck of the nation, if you will, has gotten more warm and the sun's up a little earlier, so it's a little easier. The January rides were cold and they could be wet, and now it's in comparison to those, it's much easier. If I had started biking now, maybe my baseline would be different. So I know how bad it can be.
Right.
So right now it's really a lot easier than it was. The bike is holding up really well. I've got probably 500-600 miles on the bike now, and
nice.
And no real major repairs so far. And
have you hit the habit point?
Yeah. I mean, when I know that it's a day that I'm supposed to bike and I don't because of business or an appointment or whatever, or it's really rainy day, I kind of miss it and I need it and I feel like, oh, I didn't do that, so I feel bad about it. It's kind of like the years of Taekwondo, we became habitual. every Monday, Wednesday, Friday we were there.
Yeah.
And we weren't there, so I'm like, and then weightlifting, it was, every Friday, Sunday, and Tuesday, and then we stopped doing it, and it was awkward, or we would stop for a day, or we'd miss a couple of days, and it was like, oh, so it's become a part of what I do. It's, do I say it's the ritual?
It's a ritual.
Every morning, I get up and and it's funny, it's a ritual to start bike riding. I have 5
Yeah.
or 6 different things that I have to do each time I get on the bike before I feel comfortable about being on the bike.
Yeah.
I've got to turn the light on. I've got to turn the tail light on blinking. I've got to turn my podcast on. I've got to turn my training recording app on. I've got to turn the right speed on the bike. I got a light on the back of my helmet. I got to make sure that's on. There's all these other, my gloves are on. I mean, there's all these little things. And if I don't do them in a certain order, I will miss one.
Right.
And I will remember that I missed it about a half a mile down the road and I'm not in a position to fix it.
Yeah.
And then it just throws the whole bike ride off kilter.
Yeah. Then you're like the whole rest of the way, you're just worrying about that one thing that you didn't do. And, somebody going to notice my helmet light isn't on. Is this going to be a problem?
Yeah. The downside of biking in late spring or in the spring is that more people are out now than they were in January.
Yeah, I've
so
noticed
I am
that too.
competing with a lot more people on bike paths and bike lanes and through the university where I bike through.
Yeah.
That has been more of a challenge because I'm moving quite speedily now through these areas.
Yeah.
So I've noticed that I've had to really pull back on my speed because I got too many more people around me.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So anyway, yes, so I am continuing with my New Year's resolution. I am still biking. In fact, I'm biking more, and I've even thought about figuring out a way to connect holders onto my bike so I could take my 4 or 5 core golf clubs to the driving range.
I know. So I'm looking forward to seeing you.
So I can biking
your
to the golf range. So we'll see how that goes. But that's my next big thing. How about you?
Good on you. I am still biking. I took a week off right at the very end of February, beginning of March, because I knocked a rib out of place, I think, and kind of torqued my neck. It was really just more tension driven than anything else. And I got it readjusted fairly rapidly with the chiropractor. So that was awesome. But it was pretty much like a week of my muscles were sore and hurting for the rest of that week because it was hard. It was jarring enough. So I decided to just not worry about biking that week because I was concerned that would cause more tension than relieve, and that would potentially knock everything out again.
Right.
So I did it, and then I got back to biking, which was really good. But I noticed that getting back started on getting biking was really tough for me. After a week of not doing it, it became easier to say, well, I need to get into the office early. And we've been right in the middle of working on launching the Real Herb Market this month. So I've had this huge extra project that's overwhelming and that's honestly scary to me a lot more than I probably let on. And it's challenging. And, I really want it to go well. And there's so much to do with it that I kept excusing it. Oh, well, I'm not going to bike today because that'll get me into the office an extra, hour early. And if it's either biking or yoga, it'll be easier to just do the yoga. And, I'm not even meditating. I did that too. I kind of, started up about the second week in March. I started up on meditation again after having taken that long stinking break that I should not have taken, but I did. And so that was rough. And what I realized in the absence of biking and the absence of meditation and yoga, I didn't really give up yoga, but the absence of biking and the absence of meditation showed me how important both of those are. And it's not just the one or the other. I kind of need both of them now. So I'm happy-ish with where I'm at for my progression on this resolutions. I'm a little bit concerned because what I'm realizing is that this may be like yoga. I have to do it for the rest of my life rather than this is just a phase for a year or two. So when I decided I was going to do it, I was like, well, if I bike for 2 years, I'll feel like I've earned the bike. So it'll be okay. And after that, if I just do or don't, it won't matter. And I'm realizing I probably need to bike every week for the rest of my life. And that's good, little overwhelming, but good. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Well, at least you keep moving. And, a lot of people, if you ask them what their resolution was this year, they have completely forgot about it at this point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need. Oh, yeah. So the fact that you're still doing it and you're still on it is really great.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, the key, I think, to being successful in your resolutions is willingness to allow for flexibility, which is what I've done. And, it's an experiment. Just like playing with the herbs, it's an experiment.
Right.
Herbalism is a practice. The reason we use practice is because you're practicing.
Right. So with that really bad pun.
That wasn't that bad a pun. Okay, it was a little bad, but
okay. So anything else that we want to cover on this ritualistic podcast?
No, although I am thinking that sometime soon we should have a ritual for launching the Real Herb Market. I think that'll be coming up, but I think we'll tell y'all more about that as we get closer. I don't think I'm quite ready for that.
Look, I'm just going to be excited that it's working and running because we've got a lot of interest in it, and we've got a lot of people that already want to be founding sellers.
Yep.
And it's really exciting, and because of those people, I'm pushing through a lot of my own fears and challenges on getting things done and getting things to working the way I want them to work and the way that at the level I want them to work.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key. I could slap it together and we could find a way, but I don't want people or sellers or our sellers to feel like this was just slapped together. They don't know what they're doing, and exactly. I don't feel confident in selling here.
Yeah, our sellers and our buyers, all of them, everyone, the whole public, they all deserve a really good site that functions well.
Well, especially since, honestly, the bars are so high with organizations and other companies like Etsy and Amazon and Walmart and Alibaba and all these other marketplaces.
Yeah.
We have to be at a certain level that, maybe 5-10 years ago we didn't have to be.
Right.
But we do now.
We do now.
There's an expectation level.
And I want to live up to that.
So.
Still scary.
So with that,
put an herb on it.
The statements made about herbs and products on this podcast have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided on this podcast or any affiliated websites is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional. You should not use the information on this podcast and its affiliated websites for a diagnosis or treatment of any health problem. Always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new vitamins, supplements, diet, or exercise program before taking any medication, or if you have or suspect you might have a health problem. Any testimonials, questions, or case studies are based on individual results and do not constitute a guarantee that you will achieve the same results.